Hey guys, it's Brandon here. So glad that you could join me today. Today I want to talk about some Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories strategies and deck building. I have seen a lot of people bash on Chain of Memories because they hate it so much, and personally I've never actually had a problem with just Chain of Memories as a whole. I really like the game. It's one of the few games that you could play where you could theoretically go without getting hit a single time, even if somebody else tries to hit you. This is one of those games that I really think is very underrated and underappreciated. So I just want to delve in here and just show you a strategy that I've developed that actually I can guarantee will work every single time if you follow it closely. Now, it's not going to be one of those like super, you have to follow a very specific system, otherwise, it's not that ridiculous. It's just a couple of basic principles that if you just kind of implement, you should be fine. My strategy I give to people, it will work on proud mode. There's not going to be a guarantee that you won't die, but you will be able to get through pretty easily if you follow it pretty closely. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so the opening deck that you get, you start with 13 cards and you have 223 used CP out of 275. It allows an easy input of Blizzard, and I was lucky and I actually found another card before I pulled this up. But I personally don't want to add just a bunch of pathetic cards. But I will say that the highest card in your deck is a 7. 7s are pretty decent, but the more important thing is that the highest enemy card you will find in Traverse Town will definitely come from the guard armor, and I think it'll be probably like a 6 or a 7, maybe an 8. So you won't have to worry too much. On top of that, the highest card you're going to find amongst Heartless will be a 4, coming from the red and the blue Requiems, or whatever they're called. The Blue Rhapsody, I think is what it's called. This deck is, I will say, it's pretty garbage, but if you don't have anything good by Wonderland, because the Creeper Plants as well as the Crescendos have 6s, you should be able to get through okay. But I always do Wonderland first anyway, because I hate the Trickmaster fight, and the earlier you start something, the lower the HP for that boss. So I try to do the Trickmaster when he's the easiest. But I don't want to get into that right now. But as you can see, this deck is pretty garbage, but it's not too bad for where we're at in the game. I will say it is something I would definitely try to edit as soon as possible. The other thing I want to point out is I never recommend to people to use a Moogle room at all until you get to the second series of worlds. And the reason why is because the cards that you get in the first 6 worlds are just complete garbage. You can only get the first series of cards, and it's not something you should invest your Moogle points in. They are very limited. They're not going to be able to restock them the way you could in the Game Boy Advance version, whereas you can just re-enter a room and get more cards, and this game you can't. So I strongly discourage people from using a Moogle room until you get to the Atlantica, Neverland, and Hollow Bastion series of the game. And it doesn't matter if and when you use them, but I would use them very sparingly because you're not going to use all those cards. If you were to use an entire Moogle room, you're not going to use all those cards. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, the only exception to this, I will say, if you're going to use a Moogle room before you get to Atlantica, let it be because you want to get a free pack of cards. Every time you go to a Moogle room, you get a free attack pack, and if you are in a pinch and you don't want to find them in the vicinity of the environment, that would be a good use of Moogle room. I do know if you go to Olympus and a few other places in the early stages of the game, you will find plenty of Moogle rooms. So if you have plenty of Moogle rooms to spare, definitely don't waste your Moogle points, but you can definitely get a free pack if you need it. Just my advice, you don't have to take that advice because some people definitely have found success otherwise, but like I said, you get some really jank cards, and I think it's a waste of Moogle points, so I strongly discourage it. When you're leveling up, I strongly recommend you always get a sleight if it's available. Slates are good because you want to get them as quickly as possible. HP is really great, CP is amazing. They're all important bonuses, but I think if you can get a slate, you want to get one. And when you can't get a slate, I try to do a proportion of HP to CP. I generally would say every time you get 1 HP, get CP twice, maybe 3 times. But that's not true for the beginning of the game. And I say that because at the very beginning of the game, I will get HP probably 5 times before I start that proportion, which means I probably won't get CP until around level 7. Sometimes I change it up a little bit, but the reason why is because I like to get that extra cushion on my health. You can see right here where the HP is so dang low. One hit from Axel in the fight on the end of the first floor is going to be very devastating if he hits you hard enough. So I try to counteract that by starting off with a bunch of HP, 4 or 5 bonuses. Really, you only really need 3. You don't have to get like 4 or 5 like I do. I got my sleight, my first level, and so now I got HP this level. I think I'll probably do HP 2 more times. Next time will be a sleight. So yeah, I will be level 7 when I get my first CP bonus. The nice thing about the first world is that you can level up pretty easily without much punishment or without much time. It just takes a little bit of grinding. The other thing is you do need map cards anyway, so it's not like you're really going to be missing out on taking too long to just proceed in the game. It's just easier overall if you just simply take the extra time you need. There's not really much of a challenge here. You're not really at risk of dying. So I think this is a really good time to just get yourself kind of grounded and move forward. So when you're using a card to try to unlock a key room, like Key of Beginnings, Key of Guidance, or Key of the Truth, I would strongly recommend using a red card instead of a blue or a green card, and that's simply because red cards don't really do much for you. Other than, I think the biggest advantage about the red cards is the room size. For green cards, those are really nice because they give you some kind of bonus. Martial Waking, for example, it gives you more stronger attack cards. You have Meeting Ground, so you get friend cards more often. This is extremely helpful in Agrabah. By the way, in Agrabah, I would strongly recommend doing that last of the 5 worlds. The reason why? Agrabah, Aladdin, when he attacks, he dispenses Moogle points. And Agrabah being last, the Heartless are the most powerful. When the Heartless are the most powerful of the 5 worlds you get to go to, it gives them the most HP. Having the most HP means that Aladdin has to attack them more, and more attacks means more Moogle points. So it gives him a higher hitting radius per card, and you don't have to use more of him to get more Moogle points. Less of him will get more Moogle points because their HP count is so high. So I strongly recommend going to Agrabah last. As for Strong Initiative and Lasting Days, between all of these, if I had to waste any of them, I'd probably do Lasting Days that I would get rid of first, simply because it's not going to do that much for me. Whereas Strong Initiative, it'll do like 75 to 80% of their health when you strike them before the battle. In Lasting Days, yeah, every time they spawn, they'll still be stunned, but not every battle has Heartless that spawn after. Like, they don't have not every battle has multiple waves. Sometimes they just have one wave of Heartless. So, yeah, also, it's not really going to do that much for you. The only time I might use it if I was doing my dance pad challenge, beating Kingdom Hearts with a dance pad, simply because I'm going to be slower naturally because I'm trying to use my feet on the dance pad to navigate. So I might use it for that challenge, but I don't recommend it otherwise. Oh, by the way, don't use Simba. He's pathetic. And that goes for Genie too. He just takes too long to do anything. I found a few different cards. I was looking for another Blizzard. Magic is really OP in the beginning, so finding an extra Blizzard is extremely helpful, especially for the Axel fight. I don't really want to throw another attack card in right now, although I will say I like to use 12 attack cards as a minimum, but I hate 1, so I'm going to get rid of the 6, I'm going to get rid of the 1 and throw a 6 in. And I guess I can throw a 2 in that I found, but I really don't recommend using 2s unless you're going to use Ars Arcanum when you learn it later, because it's a 1-6 power. Personally, I'd rather use a 6 and 2 zeros, because that would be more efficient, because the zeros are going to be powerful, and then you can waste the 6. But if you want to use 3 2s and then use the others for a blitz or something else, that might work. But I recommend not using 2s or 1s. They're just not very useful. You'll see me use them here and there for like clouds if I don't have any other option, because I love maining with cloud. For all the demonstration videos that I'm using from my Twitch that I've posted for this specific video, I just want to say all of these fights that you're seeing I'm actually doing on a Proud Mode game. It's simply safe to point out that the Heartless and Traverse Town are actually super manageable this early in the game. It's still early enough in the game to where the skill level is low and you don't have to worry about the enemies being overwhelming. That's why this strategy is so good and why it can work regardless of what mode you're on, because if you're grinding away and just kind of building up your base, I should say, this early in the game, you should be really set for later on. I will say that if you're discovering this and let's say you're stuck later on, you're stuck at some point, let's say you're in Twilight Town and you're stuck, I would say that you can still implement this strategy even if you haven't done all of this in Traverse Town. So I fight the guard armor at level 7. It's definitely going to be a much more manageable fight. Even for Proud mode, you're not going to find too much of a threat. I want to talk about slates kind of during this part of the video. If you're going to use a bogus slate, like you just want to use just a strong series of cards, don't be afraid to start with a card that you're not going to get back anyway. So like if you have Donald and Goofy, use them in the first part of the slate. No question whatsoever. If you want to use Fire Raw, but you don't want to get rid of a fire, use Donald first in the fire. I actually am able to hold on, let's say I have Kiriga, I'm able to hold on to it for the entire battle because I use an attack card that I don't care about first, and then I use Kira. Because you only need 2 cards, but you can use up to 3 cards in a slate. Think about which slates are the most important to you, and do you want to keep them longer? If the answer is yes, use a junk card like this 2 Kingdom Key that I'm using here, and use that first. It's a very quick, it doesn't take very long to develop. And when you do that, you can use Cura right after it. You lose the first card in the slate, so you're not going to use any of the cures, and thus you can maintain your health much longer. That's just a strategy I always implement if I'm kind of strapped on cards. Not to mention, in a longer fight, don't be afraid to use slates either, because you will get Plutos after a period of time. I actually get a Pluto on this fight, and he finds me 30 Moogle points. So even if he doesn't find you any cards, it's still going to do something great for you. Enemy cards, they are great if you use them. Do not put an enemy card in your deck if you don't plan on using them. They will be a complete waste of space. My recommendations that I like to use for enemy cards is the Card Soldier, because it increases the swing speed of attack cards, and the other one I like to use is Vexen, that you don't get until Twilight Town because it gives you auto life. I will cycle through a few others. I don't usually use a third enemy card, and when I do, it's because I have plenty of extra CP available. I've only used Jafar very rarely. You don't need Jafar as much for Sora as you might need it for Riku, because Riku's decks are more set, so Jafar is nice. Sora, you can get around that very easily. The only real enemy card for Sora that comes to mind besides those 2 cards, I would probably say maybe a Shadow, because it's an incrementer. Maybe an Air Pirate, because it's Item Bracer. Really, I say that because you should always carry a few items with you. This whole Axel fight that you just saw, this is all on Proud mode. It's not very difficult. He's just a test, so it's not like you're going to have to worry too much about getting fire. You see I screw up here with Donald because he uses Blizzard then Fire, but other than that, it was pretty flawless. I utilized Donald and Goofy very well. Overall, I'm very satisfied with how it goes. I get stun impact here at level 7. I guess I was level 6 at the guard armor fight. Now that you're grounded, though, this is the important part. Whatever world you choose to go to next, I strongly recommend that it's not Agrabah. I often will do Wonderland, but if you don't have really much cards that are at or higher than 6, if you only have if you don't find any 6s or higher in the environment, it's probably okay not to go. I actually will alternate between Wonderland and Monstro, and in this run that I'm doing here for this video, it's going to be Monstro that I go to next. And the world I choose depends on how hard I think the boss is going to be. And I want the hardest boss to be first because their HP will be at the lowest. I'm not doing the Trickmaster, but I will be doing Monstro because I don't like the Parasite Cage. The Parasite Cage is a pain in my butt. You get high jump, which is very nice right away. On top of that, the world is smallest. So I want to do Monstro and just get this over with, and we can beat the Parasite Cage. Alright, so here I finally, on the 4th floor, I'm at Olympus, I finally get a cure. So I'm going to throw that in my deck right now. If you, for whatever reason, are not getting any cures, don't be afraid to use a Moogle Room and just get 1. You'll probably get a series of Fires, Blizzards, and Cures. But be very, very, very frugal about how you use your Moogle points this early. So I actually use a Moogle Room at this point, and I was actually going to buy 1 blue pack, and that is until I found a Kingdom Key 9 here, which completely changed everything because I was getting sick and tired of not having any blizzards. So instead of going farther, I figured, okay, well let's just give this a shot and see what happens. Okay, awesome. 5th floor, I finally got the last card for Kiriga. This is great. So, as you can see in the Larkscene fight, it's not really that difficult, although it is going to be challenging if you let her beat you up a little too much. So, once you beat her, then you can really start going. The 100-Acre Wood is the last place I would go to prior to really starting to get going. You're going to find that it's going to be easy to rack up a little bit of Moogle points here, and at Rabbit's house I find a fire card. You'll find probably a few cards here and there. The most important things to get here, though, I would say, are the Mega Ether and the Elixir. Those things are going to be very important down the line. If you want to come back and get Spellbinder, that's fine, but I try to stay away from the elemental attacks like Spellbinder and even Bond of Flame, just because it's going to heal people like Larkscene or Axel when you fight them later. But that's completely up to you. If you want to get it, you can. I think the hardest fight you're going to have before really getting a decent deck is going to be Riku, because it's going to be right before you really start to get going. You'll find here that I struggle a little bit, but it's really not that ridiculous as long as you don't do anything stupid. Granted, this is Proud Mode. I beat Riku eventually on my second attempt. The first attempt, I was actually more interested in trying to record the first segment. It is what it is. I mean, I use a lot of goofy combos here. Don't be afraid to use sleights and stuff like that. Overall, it was a pretty successful fight. Something else I'd like to point out real quick, just before really getting going on having a really good deck. I don't know what it is about the 8th floor and the 13th floor, but especially on the 8th floor, it seems like I always get a key to rewards like every 5th or 6th battle, but it's only ever on the 8th floor, and it's generally only in the first room. I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter if it's Atlantica that you choose or if it's Neverland. I always happen to get a key to the rewards every so often. I just got my 3rd in the last 30 minutes here. If you really want to try the grind for key to the rewards, try that out and see if it works. I know it's always worked for me. Maybe it'll work for you as well. So I finally use a Moogle room when I get to Neverland, and you can see here that I don't get the best of cards, but at least I get 2 more Clouds for an Omni Slash as well as a Thunder. So it wasn't a great stop, but it was still worth it in my opinion. Something I would always take advantage of is know your enemies and what they are strong against and what they are weak against. Right now I'm about to go against Captain Hook. I have a few Sonic Blades set up as well as a Stun Impact, but I took all of my Thunders out because Thunder does absolutely no damage to him, and he is weak against fire. Rather, he's stunned by fire. So I have a few fire raids set up here, as well as a fire Uga. Blizzard does normal damage, as well as a couple of clouds. So that's going to make the battle a lot easier. So that's something to think about when it comes to bosses that you're going to face. For example, if you're going to fight Vexen, don't throw blizzards in the deck. It's just kind of common sense. This is the part where items really come in handy. The Mega Ether is amazing because it resets all of your magic cards, and it resets the reload counter from 3 down to 1. For me personally, I like to wait until after the reload counter goes up a few notches before using it. And of course the Elixir does the same thing for attack and magic cards. It doesn't reset the reload counter, which is why we're going to get a Mega Elixir from the Destiny Islands when we go there. The easiest way to use items is to either put them in the first part of a slate, followed by 2 strong cards, or use them right after the enemy finishes reloading. So when he finishes the reload counter, use the item because it's perfect timing. It takes too long for them to reload all of their cards and then have enough time to break it, so that's what I like to do. General rule of thumb, I would always wait as long as possible to use items, because items can, like the Mega Ether and the Elixir rather, they will restore all of your cards, including those that you lose in slates. If you can successfully pull off using an item, all of your cards will come back. That's what makes them so reliable. Now granted, obviously you don't want somebody else to break your card, and if somebody else that you're fighting against uses an item, I would try to break it as soon as you possibly can, because it will give them the same advantage it would give you. If the strategy I presented to you, like when they're reloading, or in a slate, if that doesn't prove to be successful, just find an Air Pirate enemy card and it'll give you Item Bracer so that you can successfully use it without any problems. You can also Strike Raid, stun them, and then use an item. So I used 2 Moogle rooms in Twilight Town, and I really didn't mean to use much of the second one. I just wanted to get some cards and I didn't get them. But anyway, I get a bunch of clouds, and that really is going to help beef up my deck a little bit. Now we're getting to the point where it's going to be a lot more manageable for me personally. By the time you get to the 13th floor, I would grind and hold on to a few strong initiatives for it, so that way when you use it, you can get very, very, very easy experience leveling up. When combining strong initiative with Trinity Limit, you're going to have experience faster than a Desert can melt ice, so it's something I would strongly recommend doing. It's a great combo. If you don't want to use Trinity Limit, just use, I like to use Sonic Blade as well as a few Omni Slashes, and that should wreck you through a bunch of these battles. So level 55 is a good spot, I think, to be at just for the rest of the game. With Sora, I would advise 290 HP and 1000 CP. You should have gotten all the slates by this point. If you want to vary off from it, that's fine, but notice how I was at 850 CP and I didn't want to do anything to the deck until afterwards. And so this is the part where I'm going to really completely revise my deck and make it that much better. First things first, I use a Moogle room. I'm looking for some Oblivions and Oathkeepers and Clouds. I get some Oblivions. What really caught me off guard is getting all 9s. That's just pure luck. So I don't get any Mega Elixirs that are lower than 3, so it's not the best draw, but I can still work with that. So we're going to do some deck editing. Also, something I want to point out, if you initiate that cure strategy I told you about earlier by putting an attack card in front of it, any card that you use after that first card in a slate will be kept until the next round. So even if your card is premium, you will still keep the final 2 cards if you use them in a slate. If you use premium cards individually, then they will disappear for the rest of the battle unless you get it back with an item. Because we're going to implement this strategy with Cure, and because premium cards stay when you use them as the second and third cards of a slate, you can actually have all of your cures be premium cards because you're going to keep them if you put them behind an attack card. That will significantly cheapen the cost of cure. What I like to do when starting a deck from scratch is I will put the most expensive cards in first, items, enemy cards, clouds, cures, whatever is going to cost the most. And put as much in there as you want, and then you can work around it with your Keyblades. Keyblades are good, don't get me wrong. If you use a deck full of Oblivion and Oathkeepers, you're definitely going to do a lot more damage than you would if you had a bunch of Kingdom Keys and Olympias and whatnot. But because I specifically like to main with Clouds because he does a significant amount of damage, I will put him in first and prioritize him, and then I will think about my Keyblades. Because I use slates, Sonic Blade is going to do the same amount of damage regardless of if you're using weak cards or if you're using strong cards. So at this point, having a card soldier as an enemy card really isn't that useful because I'm going to be relying heavily on slates. That's where my item count is going to really come in handy. So you could theoretically take out the card soldier and put something else more efficient in, such as a shadow, maybe an aqua tank. I'm not going to expect everybody to find all these enemy cards. I ended up finding some because I was grinding a lot through some of these worlds. But for a Heartless card that I know that you're going to have, an enemy card I should say, Oogie Boogie never hurts. Maleficent isn't as good, but you could still pull it off. Captain Hook is decent. I really try to stay away from all these other enemy cards, but some of those might work, but I just would be very careful about using them because if you don't use them, they just become a waste of space. And if you're going to main Cloud like what I do, when you're going to use slates, think about the cards you're going to lose in the slate. You can definitely use premium cards like you do with the Cure trick. I personally don't for whatever reason. I have 4 premium cards of Cloud out of 12. And if you look at this combo, I'm going to have a 4-5-7, 3-8-7, and so on. All the first cards on the left in a slate will be lost. Next thing I'll have these 8 cards on the right 2 columns. So my next slate will be a 5-7-8, 7-8-8, and then I'll have 2 9s left over, which I probably won't use that. Lose the first card again, I lose the 5, and then I lose the 7, leaving me with 7, 8-8, and 8-9-9. I lose the 7, and then the premium 8, giving me 8-8-9-9. Finally, I have right here, I lose the 8 and an 8-8-9 combo, having a 9 left over, And then finally over on the next tone, I have an 899. So it's not flawless, but it's definitely useful if you want to extend and to take advantage of these slates for as long as possible. At that point, I can use a Mega Ether when the other person is reloading, or I can put it at the beginning of a slate. And it will be very efficient. This strategy will always work for me. It took me 2 times with the strategy to get through the first Marluxia fight. I handled them pretty well once I got my Mega Ether off. Now, the second fight should be a piece of cake unless you really just don't know how to use slates, and if you haven't figured the strategy out by now, you probably never will. Now, the third fight for Marluxia, he uses a lot of slates, but they're easily broken. Just make sure you have at least 3 zeros and a bunch of high cards on you. Not to mention, I think he's weaker because he seems to be a better fighter on his own. But then this fight, he clearly has Strelitzia backing him up, and you know that Strelitzia is a good person. No, I'm just totally kidding about Strelitzia. We don't actually know if it's her, but it'd be kind of funny if it was. Overall, my thoughts on Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, it's a really good experience. If you have an idea of deck building and you kind of know what you're doing, through this tutorial that I made, through this video, I ended up dying a few times to different people. I think the most times I ever died was against Vex in the first fight, and that was like 5 with this strategy, just from this playthrough alone. But the other thing was, I wasn't really trying. I was kind of just half-hearting it. This is a pretty consistent strategy. As long as you follow some of the principles that are mentioned within the strategy, you should be fine, regardless of what mode you're doing it on. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. Please leave a comment. Let the YouTube algorithm pick this video up if you really want it to. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please let me know what you liked about this video, what you didn't like about this video, and most importantly, if and how it helped you. I am always open to suggestions on how I can make my content better. I'm very excited about the next few things I'm going to make. I'm going to be doing the dance pad, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories to the dance pad. Very similar to this run, but it's going to be a lot difficult, a lot harder because I'm going to be using the dance pad. In other news, I just want to let you know that for those of you who subscribe to me, and if you're between number 22 and 49 on my subscription list, or for those that subscribe, I'm going to be choosing 3 of you at random and buying you free pizza. More details on how I'm going to go about that will come later. For now, if you know you're one of those subscribers between 22 and 49, just leave a comment on whatever video you want. Let me know your YouTube name. So let's say your name is Roxas Diaries 358/2. Well, just say in the comment and then say what number subscriber you are. So in this case, it'd be Roxas Diary 358/2, subscriber number 27, or whatever number subscriber you are. I want to point out you cannot win if you do not leave a comment. This is very important, as the only people that will go in the drawings for free pizza will be people that actually post their comment accordingly. By the time I get to 49 subscribers, what I'll do is I'll be able to randomize the numbers and the names, and when I finally come up with numbers, that's when I'll be notifying those 3 people that they're going to be getting free pizza. So that's definitely something to look forward to, and there's going to be many more perks to come after that, where that came from. So be sure to stay tuned to the content that I have. There's going to be a lot of really cool things that are upcoming as I grow this channel into something much greater. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a wonderful day.